lounging, son.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and with me again is another awesome guest for you guys. I have creator Juni Ba with me. I'm a little bit new to his work, but once I saw some of his stuff, I knew I had to check out more, and I wanted to bring you on the show so that we could talk comics, show some other people your work. So welcome.
Thanks for the invitation.
Oh yeah, man. So, I usually, especially if somebody that I'm talking to for the first time, I always like to kind of ask them, what started their love for comics? How did you get into comics?
Okay. Because you're Americans, I don't know if you're gonna get all because the thing is, I grew up in Senegal, so there was a big French influence. So most of the comics that I got when I was a kid were Franco-Belgian. So there was the character Spirou, who's a Belgian character. He's a groom. He's a ginger groom, basically. He's dressed all in red. His pet is a squirrel. So that's probably the oldest comic I have. And whenever I could, I got my hands on Batman TAS comics. So that was like the 90s. Okay. Yeah, and the thing that I guess kept the momentum going was I used to read the Mickey magazine. That was a French publication.
Okay.
So you had a bunch of Disney comics, but also pages of various, mostly comedic style comic books for kids. So that would sort of broaden my interest and discovery of various things. And then, of course, I think my first manga was technically a Dragon Ball volume when I was around 8 or 7. Okay. But the first manga that I bought as a manga was when I was like 14, I think. I used to I pestered my grandma until she gave it to me, and it sort of exploded from there. Like I had a huge manga phase when I was a teenager.
Okay.
And then Hellboy when I was like 17, I think, introduced me to more of an American style of comic books.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was a mix of all the different things.
That's interesting. I mean, I definitely see the manga influence in your art. It's not something I'm used to, and I think I just I read Excellence. It's one of my favorite books. I saw a cover you did. That was the first time I saw your art. I'm like, oh, this is dope. Who is this? And then and then a friend of mine, he shared a post which we'll talk about for your book you're doing with TKO, and I'm like, and I because I work at a comic book shop, so he's the manager at our other location, and I was like, dude, what the fuck? Who is this dude? And then I fell down the rabbit hole, and I started like looking you up and started like researching, and I read a couple things from, I think it's pronounced Kugali. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
So I checked out a couple stuff from there, and I'm really loving what I'm seeing, dude. And I don't know how to pronounce the new title. I don't want to butcher it.
The TKO one is called
Delia. So I'm excited to see that, but I mean, it still hasn't come out. So
yeah.
But your art, dude, it's very kinetic. It's got a lot of energy to it, and I hope to see more stuff at least published here, because I know that when I reached out to you, most of it you said was digital.
Yeah. For now.
Okay, good. Because look, I'll be just straight up. I don't normally read digital.
Mm-hmm.
If I can get a print version, I do it 10 times out of 10, because for me, like, I like to have a book in my hand. I like to have like the paper, all that stuff, right? And
yeah,
but I couldn't miss out on your stuff, so I was like, I'm gonna check it out.
Nice, I'm on it.
Yeah, so I think it's cool to hear you say like for your like the influence like manga and Hellboy. Once you kind of got more into like the American comic books, which ones started to stand out? Which ones did you gravitate towards? Was it less of the super stuff and more of the indie?
It was kind of a mix of both, and then it shifted very much towards the indie side. So the first one was Hellboy. I mean, I had read American comics before here and there,
right?
Just because you just, the thing to understand is that there were very few of them in the one library we had in Senegal, in Dakar at least. It was a sizable library, but most of the output in terms of comics was a few manga volumes here and there and a few European books.
Right.
So I have, for example, I discovered Corto Maltese, which is like a Portuguese, I think, a comic series.
Yes.
I saw the volume and I was like, I've never seen this stuff before. I need to have it. That's how rare non-French stuff was. So I found Hellboy through the movie, then discovered that it was a comic book series, but that took several years. And then I asked to have the first volume, got it delivered to me by my stepmom being a member of the European Union in Senegal. So she had some ways to get stuff brought into the country for Christmas. Like that's how complicated it would be for me to get stuff if I didn't have the opportunity to go to Europe to get stuff. It would be very complicated to get it delivered to me. So I fed off the one first volume of Hellboy for like a full year before we went to France, and I bought a bunch of other ones. And then I think around the Avengers movie came out in 2012. And I had seen Iron Man, I had seen the Hulk. I like the Hulk a lot, but not so much an Iron Man. But like the concept of it was hype enough that I had to see that movie.
Right.
And when I came out, I was like, yeah, okay, now I need to like catch up on who these guys are. So I watched the movies first. I remember the first Marvel book that I got after watching the movie was the Thor one, because I saw Thor. I thought the movie isn't very good, but it has the crest of like the concept that is probably much better in comics. Mm-hmm. So I read I think it was Thor the Mighty Avenger or something like that. It was drawn by Chris Samney.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Okay.
And I think written by Mark Waid, but I'm not sure. But that was my first introduction to like non-Hellboy stuff from America. That was recent, at least. I asked a bunch of people on the internet, okay, I'm willing to learn English. Give me books. Like, give me as many books as you can. So I read as much as I could about Thanos. I read all of the Marvel cosmic stuff from like 2008 and 7. So Guardians of the Galaxy, Nova,
all the good stuff.
Yeah, like, I mean, I spend my life on the floor of my room just reading digital books because I just got them through not necessarily super legal means. And I just ate as much as I could. It was my introduction to Marvel, and I started reading more and more books, the Captain Americas, and I started discovering characters like this. And from then, I started looking into why is it that when I follow characters, depending on the books, I don't like them as much. And I just realized that actually what I liked was the creators behind. So you start off with Thor, drawn by Chris Samney, and then you branch off, and other Thor books are not necessarily your stuff, but other Chris Samney books are definitely your stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, I started looking into, I discovered Deadly Class, which again, ate completely. And then I started branching into more indie stuff. And yeah, now I have like, I don't know, the list is really long now, but yeah, I got tired of superheroes over time, both because it's very convoluted and to follow, and because the level of, I guess, author voice isn't as satisfying as in indie stuff. Yeah. So now I'm following indie, and whatever authors want to do that's most personal to them, I guess, is generally what gets me off the most.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. It's like I said, I work at a shop, right? So, but I've also been reading comic books since I was like between 5 and 6 was when I first started. So like superheroes like have always been there, right? Have always been reading. So when I try to recommend stuff, it's not always easy to be like, okay, pick this up, like, because people but there's so much history. Like, do I need to read this? Where do I start? If I read this, I have to read this first. And then it's like you fall, like I said, I fell down a rabbit hole with your work, right? Like, talk about a rabbit hole, like, my God, Marvel and DC, there's just so much content. And it's not always easy to steer somebody towards, and like you said, right, like you saw me, so like it's not like it's one creator or one creative team that's doing this one book and you can follow them. It's
Yeah.
thousands of creators. So but you know, like hearing your story, man, it's I guess I take for granted how readily it was available to me, you know, comic books. Like I didn't have to like, just hearing you go on the hunt and like just trying to absorb everything you can. It's like it's kind of it's exciting to hear that, like, because you're like, I can imagine you like, I need to get this, I need to get that, I want this, I want that, because it's not there for you. What is the so what is the comic scene like in Senegal? Is there also a lot of
Um,
creatives there, or is it not as big of a community in terms of like comic book creators?
the short answer would be to say that there isn't.
Okay.
The first Senegalese comic book magazine came out last year, I think, and they are, because basically there's no. I would say there's an interest for it, mostly because comics, regardless of where you go, comics tend to be a very popular medium, like in the sense of like cheap and affordable, you know,
Right.
or at least it should be. And so I grew up basically being kind of the only person in my surroundings who was really invested in comics, aside from like the one or two friends who were as nerdy as I was. Even nerdier, even, because like I had that friend who kept coming up with like names of stuff. Like even this morning, I remembered the day when we were like 13, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm reading Dune right now," and I'm like, "What's Dune?" Yeah, so that's the level of problem, I guess, is you are interested in something that most people don't necessarily have much of an interest in, or at least they do when they're kids, but then they grow out of it and other forms of entertainment take precedence. There isn't an industry for comics in Senegal yet.
Okay.
Just like animation, there's like one animation studio. It's very small. And all this stuff is basically being born now. Like if you look at the history of the country, my dad was the first person to be, was of the first generation to be born in a country that's independent. So they were still figuring out stuff like, how do we build the country? How do we make it work and all that stuff? And then I'm of the first generation that's basically, now that the house has been built, or at least now that the car has been built, more like, we can now turn it on and start moving forward. And I'm the first generation of that, and I'm not the only one. Like, this is the conversation we often have with the people of Kugali. We are the first generation of people who can start pushing and making the art, the comic scene of various African countries more well known. But that's because before that, we had each like one or two or three people in our countries doing the stuff. There's the one Senegalese comic I know is called Gogolu. It was just about it was kind of the same vibe as those American newspaper comics about a random person, like a recurring character doing goofy things.
Right.
That one was about a guy who's literally just trying to make ends meet, find money and feed his family, but always in a very comedic way, because he's kind of dumb and very lazy. Like, yes, a very relatable kind of subject matter, I guess. The fantasy wasn't that. It wasn't a subject matter you would find in fiction, weirdly enough. Even though when you talk to people, you would find yourself having discussions about how you shouldn't go in the garden at noon because demons are going to come kidnap you. So it is part of the folklore and the way people view the world, but weirdly enough, it's not in the fiction, because they prefer fiction that's more realistic and more in contact with what their actual lives are.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would just oftentimes be told that the stuff I'm into is kind of stupid and silly, and stop watching Dragon Ball, it's going to fry your brain. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that like it's funny that you're saying that too, because like I think comic books in general, from when I was a kid, because you talked about not having a huge like bunch of friends that read it. I didn't have any friends when I was a little kid that read comics. I don't like, and comic books I think were read more in the early 90s when I was a kid,
Yeah.
than by younger kids than they are now even. But I just didn't have any friends that were into it, so like it was just me. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
the comics, and I would sit in my room and I would fucking read all day, every day, that anytime I had a free moment, you know. That's why I started like the YouTube channel and stuff, was just so I could get it out, you know, like I could get out my
Yeah.
passion for comics. Now it's a completely different thing. I think once I hit high school, I met one of my friends that I'm still friends with now, and we do our weekly podcast where we talk comics, you know, and like we've been friends ever since. Like we like hip hop and we like comics, and that's how we kind of did in school. And so like all day long, because we were in a continuation school, so it was like you basically work at your own pace, and we would have like the split headphones to where we were both listening to music, and we would have comic books on the desk, and that's all we would do. Like we would do work, but a lot of music and comics, you know. So
Yeah.
it wasn't until I was older that I met somebody that was also into that stuff. But I think comic books, because of the movies, like everybody knows who these characters are. Everybody thinks like comic books are like in, I guess. I don't be phrasing this wrong, but I'm just basing it off like the type of people that I see coming to comic book stores now, as opposed to people that I saw in the shops when I was a kid. Like it's way different, and it's way more diverse in terms of like the types of people that are reading, and it's because of the content also that we're getting, which I think is more broad and basically than it was in the 90s when I started. I am curious, so like growing up, like not like having a lot of friends that were into it, like you didn't have access to maybe as much as you would have liked, but what made you decide that you wanted to produce comic books yourself?
Like, it's half a joke, but okay, so I had a GameCube.
Oh my god, I haven't heard GameCube in so long.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a GameCube, and on it there were several games, including Sonic the Hedgehog Mega Collection, I think it was called.
Yep.
And I had known Sonic from the Dreamcast years, because my first Sonic game was Sonic Adventure, and then I got the GameCube Sonic Adventure 2. But Sonic Mega Collection was the one that sort of, weirdly enough, transformed my passion for the character into like a desire to make something. Because Mega Collection had, among the various bonus content, you had the intro to Sonic CD. And the intro was a 2D video of just Sonic running around. But the animation of it was so good, the framing of all the shots and the way he moved, and I just kept it on loop. I watched it over and over and over and over again, and I started making comics out of that. I started making Sonic comics. Nice. Which I still have some pages in the ugliest sin, but it started off like this. One of my friends was co-writing with me. I think I was 11 years old when I said, this is what I want to do as a job. And I was lucky enough that my family members never said, no, you're not, or no, you can't. They always said, yeah, sure, like try. The one thing that my dad said was, you can do anything you want as long as you work for it, and as long as you're good at it. So from the age of 11, they basically just said, okay, do whatever you want. Just, they always tried to keep my feet on the ground in terms of like not be in fantasy universes too much, and be reminded of the fact that reality is a thing. Because I was the kid who would see things and say weird stuff and make references to content that they absolutely don't understand. And they would often be kind of scared, like he's losing his grasp on reality. He's gonna become obsessed or something. I don't know. But yeah, it started off with a Sonic video, I guess, and then just started drawing my own stuff, tracing manga, and from then on, just I started looking at the stuff that I was reading purely for entertainment. I started looking at it as like research material. Like, how do you draw something? Why do different artists draw differently? And what kind of effect does it have? Why do certain books look a certain way? Like, for Mickey doesn't have the same face as Hellboy, and that's on purpose. They don't have the same purpose in terms of themes and mood and everything. So yeah, my brain from then on was obsessed.
Which artists would you say you were really were you studying the most? Which ones, besides obviously Mike Mignola, because you said Hellboy?
Yeah, there were different phases, I guess. For the longest time, I was looking at manga because it was the most readily available. Because you just have to go on the internet, and the manga community on the web in like 2000s was awesome in terms of access, because you would find websites that just had scans of everything, and so you would constantly find new books, new series to follow. The scans would often be made by fans themselves, which is actually really nice, because if you were lucky, which would tend to happen often, you would find books where the scans would have loads of little notes of like the translations and the different ideas and explanations of like, yeah, the character is using this word because it means this and it refers to this particular element of Japanese culture and all that stuff. Anyway, so manga for the longest time, especially Shaman King, that was my favorite, with Full Metal Alchemist. Those two I traced a lot. There were a bunch of others, but those two kind of kept coming back. D. Grayman as well. A recurring one is not strictly comics, it's the Gorillas. I'm one of those kids who every time the Gorillas appeared on TV, there was a mandate in my family to call me so that I could watch the clip. That was before I had the internet. When you had to be in front of the TV when the stuff was on and you missed it.
Yep.
Yeah, so the Gorillas, like I discovered it when I was a kid, when they made their first videos, and then when I started using the internet a lot more, I watched the videos on loop and looked into the art books. I never had any. I have one Jamie Hewlett now, but yeah, that's a recurring one. I think when I was 17 or 18, around the time I got into Hellboy, I also got heavily back into the Gorillas. And I think you can sort of see in my art how the two things intersect.
Yes, I'm seeing it now. I'm like picturing the art in my head. I totally see the J.B. Hewlett influences and the Mignola kind of mashed together, making manga. Yeah, because like I said, your style is like, it's unique. Like once I saw it, like now I can pick it out when I see your stuff. So once, like all these influences, right? You decide you want to do it. How did you end up at Kugali? Was that your first like published work, or did you have some other stuff that you did before that?
How do I simplify this story? I just graduated from art school. I was looking to find a platform on which I could show the stories I just made for graduation, because basically the way the school was set was that during the third year of the illustration course, you were expected to produce something that you could show to a jury at the end of the year. So depending on what your different proclivities and stuff were, different people made different things, and I was always pushed towards comics because that's what I liked, and my teachers kept saying, this is something that you're actually good at, so keep going. But I ran into a bit of an issue, which was that I had been planning on making fantasy and science fiction stories based on West African folklore. When I presented my project to the teachers, their reaction was essentially, that's nice, but we're not sure you're going to find anyone willing to pay for this. Like, we're not sure you're going to find any publishers or anybody willing to like put money in this and publish this because it's too out there or something. So I had to struggle the whole year making that project of like there were two stories and another one that was more what they wanted me to do. So I had to do two different projects so that I could make the one that I wanted to do. So when I graduated, my main mindset was, I don't want to have to deal with naysayers, you might say. And the easiest way, I guess, is to gravitate towards the people who actually come from the continent. So I went on Facebook, looked at different Facebook groups of comic books, trying to find places where I could share my work, as you do when you just graduated and you're trying to figure out what your career is going to be. And I found the Kugali one, which was literally just a Facebook group at the time. It was a Facebook group and a podcast. So I showed up at the same time as a bunch of other artists from different places in the continent. And we decided to make anthologies together using the different stories that we were working on the side for ourselves. I had been approached by an American writer called Kinan, who approached me with this idea of doing a sort of space opera thing called Cain and Abeni. And I said, well, I have all of these designs that I've been doing, so we can use those and apply them to the stuff. So that's what we brought to Kugali at first. Kenan left after the first issue, and I did 2 more before I was like, wait, I was actually working on my own book before I started this stuff. And that's when I went back to Delia. So yeah, the Kugali started off with the anthologies, branched into way more than that, since like it's a full-fledged company doing all kinds of different things now. And I'm still in contact with them, and it was a very good launchpad in terms of giving you exposure. Like just putting my stuff on Kugali meant that I had my work featured on the BBC and at various conventions and all that stuff. And that's how a lot of people got to see it. But it wasn't really good for paying the bills because of the small infrastructure and everything. So I had to eventually do what I always wanted to do, really, which was to also gravitate towards the more American and British side of things. I tried the French side, but Jelia was supposed to be published in French, but that was a mess. And that's why I went to TKO.
Okay. Before I get into the new book, Delia, I do want to say that I like the fact that you're doing like West African folklore, because like that's the stuff that I like about Hellboy. I like reading about like myths or folk tales, all this stuff like that's been told over like centuries, right? And the story and the themes and stuff. And I like fantasy and like that. Like when I found out that that's what the stories you had on Kugali were about, I'm like, oh, dude, this is dope. So I don't see why anybody would think that that was like not the direction to go in, because that's, I mean, I think it's cool. I think that there's a large audience for stuff like that. But how did you end up at TKO? That publisher of all publishers, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
A lot of different stuff. So like when I saw that you were doing that, I was like, oh, that's interesting, you know?
To get the context, and I think Americans are gonna like this one. So this specific book was supposed to be published in France, and I tried for like a year or two to find a home for it. And not to badmouth the French too much, there was a French editor who said, I'm going to help you find a publishing house. There was another one who actually had a publishing house ready, but we were making the pitch, but it fell out because of differences around more of a political split, I guess. I don't even know how to describe this. Yeah, so I tried to publish it in France, and the reaction that I kept getting from publishing houses I sent it to was, this is really nice, but we don't know how to market it. Which essentially means we are used to doing books about certain things, and we don't want to take the risk of branching out outside of our comfort zone. So it is a thing that I know for a fact many Black creators in France have had an issue with. But I think it goes even beyond just a race issue. It's a habit issue more so than anything. And because there's no proof of it working, if you show up with a fantasy book that's so influenced by West Africa, both old and new elements, they haven't seen this before, so they don't know what to make of it. The one African themed book made by an African person that's worked in France is very realistic. It's just a comedy story taking place in a Ivory Coast city. So I can understand them being like, I don't know what that is. Like, it looks good, but I don't even know what I would do with it. So I think it's sad, but I guess I understand the logic. So during that time, I had been talking to my family members, and they kept saying, why don't you go to America? They are way more open-minded about this kind of stuff. And plus, they have the nose for when good business is available, basically. And they were right, because I mean, American companies have been doing the work, let's say. So I started looking into the American publishers. Obviously, I knew of a bunch of them, and TKO was one that I read, I think, 2 books from, both of them by Zichan, one of the founders, and I liked them. And I looked at the philosophy of the company, and I thought, yeah, okay, that looks nice. So let me just send the stuff. They were like created a year ago at the time I sent my email. And I thought, if the problem that I ran into till now was people being way too entrenched in their habits over decades of publication, maybe I will get more luck in going to a publishing house that's literally just a year old. And so I sent my email saying, hi, I have a book proposal. Do you want to see it? To which they say, we don't usually take them, but we know your work. We've seen it before. And we've been like waiting to see what you produce. So we want to see what you have. It was a response from Sebastian Gerner, the editor-in-chief. So I said, okay, I send the stuff. They say, yes, okay, we'll take it. We worked on it through all of 2020. And it was honestly it was the best work experience I've had, because they keep their promises. The financial aspect of it is indeed really good, which is one of the elements of the good reputation the company has. And they are very respectful and open-minded, which was, considering the subject of the book, was important to me. And Sebastian is an extremely good collaborator and editor, like amazing. Like he comes up with great ideas and very reactive, and he has a skill that I think is extremely important, which is to be able to understand what he is not supposed to get when he's looking at something that's based on a folklore he doesn't understand, which was huge. Like I loved working on it. I learned a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think TKO is a very exciting publisher. I remember when like they kind of came out of nowhere with their announcements, and that like I was like, what the hell, what the fuck is this shit? why am I seeing this random publisher? And like they were just putting out little teases, and then they announced like the books. I'm like, what the, like where did they come from? And then their format, I think, is very interesting in the terms of the way they're producing the work. You either get the stories all at once. You either get a trade paperback, you get single issues, or you get digital, and it's all released at the same time. So no matter what type of reader you are, there's something there for you. And I think that's a very cool aspect. I think they're a pleasure to work with. From my side, from like like the communication, like as for me, like reviewing stuff, or like I talked to Zichun, like I did an interview with him when the company was still in its first year as a retailer, and the content is all over the place. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a very because like you don't know what to expect from them. So like when they announce a new wave of books, it's not going to be the same stuff you got in the last wave or the wave before it. And that's why like I'm very excited to see what they continue to put out. And they don't like flood the market either. They'll put out like 4 books. I think the last one was like 4 graphic novels or 4 series, and then like 3 mini comics. And that's another thing. Like, so when you're getting a book, like it's something special. It's not something like they're not just trying to pump out a bunch of content to make money,
Yeah, I can confirm, having seen the behind the scenes of it. They really want to take their time when they make something, and they really want to make sure that they're giving it the best chances and all the attention that they think it needs to have. Which is also why I was really happy to work with them, because like it's very tempting as an author, I think, especially when you're young, to want to go to the big ones, but your book can very easily get drowned in all the output that they have. So being with TKO, at least so far, has been really great in terms of, I mean, like, even funnily enough, I was reading a tweet yesterday or the day before about how a tweet complaining about animation studios, TV channels not giving the proper budget and promotion to TV shows and forcing the creators to do it themselves. And just as I was reading it, TKO sends a message saying, hey, we have some ideas for the promotion of your book. And I'm like, it's like he knew. So it's great, and they are good ideas, and then, yeah, I really like working with them. I hope we get to make more stuff in the future too.
Yeah, I mean, like I haven't read the new book, but I hope so. Well, can you share a little bit about what Delia is like, what the story's about, and when the actual release date is going to be?
Yeah.
Stuff.
Okay. So it takes place in a completely fantasy world that still is based on West African aesthetics and a bit of other ones. It's a world in which people used to worship this guy called Sumaoro, who was a great wizard giving gifts to everyone. And then suddenly he retreated into his giant ivory tower and exploded the world. Like literally, the planet exploded, and no one knows why. So several, 60, 70 years later, people have started to live on the pieces of planet floating in space, traveling around in boats and everything. And it's a world where animals talk. It's a fantasy West African world. The two main characters are Mansour, the prince of one of the kingdoms that was destroyed by the tower, and his assistant slash storyteller, Awa, who's what we call a dieli. The dieli in West African cultures is sort of the memory of the people and a counselor for the king. It's someone who uses music and poetry to convey ideas, to tell the stories of what the culture was, the relationship between the different families, and serves as sort of a guide for the king and the people at large. So both these characters have this issue of, we live in this world now that's broken, our kingdoms are destroyed. Awa is really convinced that she should try and make the world go back to how it was before, with the great kingdom that they were living in. And they are brought into the tower with the mission of driving out the villain of the story, who's a 3 meters tall wall thug wizard. And essentially the point of the story is, it's a story about stories. It's two people who were part of the ruling class who now find themselves with an opportunity to meet the wizard who destroyed the world, and to possibly make things go back to the way they were. But as they grow more mature throughout the story, as they discover the true history of their world, they start to realize that maybe the system they were living in wasn't actually all that great, and that monarchy wasn't necessarily the best system, and that the king that Mansour is supposed to become would need to be sort of the best ruler ever. But then, can you really be one if the system around doesn't let you be one?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it has animals talking and giant robots and loads of action and magic, and most of it is a really fun adventure book. That's really what I wanted to make. I wanted them to travel into all kinds of different places, meet different weird characters, and have people have fun, basically.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. I mean, I can't wait to actually get a copy and read the book, man. Definitely looking forward to it, and I can't wait to see what else like you got in the works as well. Is like I said, I discovered your first thing I saw was the Excellence cover, right? I think week I saw you on a Ninja Turtle cover. I saw the incentive cover for that. So besides this book that you have coming out, which by the way, when does that drop?
July 6th.
Okay, cool.
Which the pre-order link on the TKO website should be available either this week or next week, depending on how they are advancing. But yeah, the easiest thing to do for now is just to follow what TKO is doing, and the pre-order link will be available shortly.
Okay, cool. And then, do you have anything else in the works?
Mostly covers. I have some book deals coming for other things, but since nothing has been signed yet, I can't really, I'd rather not jinx it or anything.
Okay.
What I can say is I've been working on a universe that I created called the Monkey Meat books. The concept of it being that it's a world where a mega corporation that sells cans of monkey meat owns an island on which they do all kinds of weird and creepy experiments with magic and technology. and it's essentially using loads of fantasy tropes, but on an island owned by a very hyper capitalistic kind of government.
Okay.
So it's monsters, but like monsters who have to pay their bills and fight against poor labor conditions and stuff like that. And I've been doing that on my own for the longest time, but now I think I'm ready to like start trying to actually publish it into a series somewhere. So yeah, that's my next goal on the American side of things.
I mean, I know you do your own stuff, but like, and you're doing other covers. But is there any books like, if given the chance, would you want to work on, or do you prefer to work on like your own creations?
See, I feel like I'm working on an issue of an image series, anthology type, which I'm not sure has been announced yet, so I'd rather not say.
Okay.
And I like working on quote unquote other people's stories, but there is this moment always where I'm like, I'd rather be working on my own stuff. So I have my list of things that I wish I would do. Let's see. I wrote a Robin story centered around Damien and the legacy of being a Robin. I wish to make it someday. I hope I can. People will still get a sort of like preview of what that could look like, because I have a Robin story coming in the Truth and Justice series for DC.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I have 30 pages on Damian Wayne coming for that. Let's see. I want to work on the Ninja Turtles. I want to do at least one issue.
Yeah.
And the best of it would be if they'd actually let me write the turtles myself, because then I could do sort of what I always preferred to do, which is I always preferred the turtle stories where they get to go outside of New York and see weird things.
Mm-hmm.
The meet gods or creatures of other dimensions, stuff like that. Like I really want to have a sort of full-on TMNT action type of book. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I oddly enough, I don't have that long of a list. Thor would be fun. And then other than that is covers. I really like doing covers. So if I have a list of like image books or other, like Jonah and the Impossible Monsters.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the visual style of it. So if I could make a cover for that, that would be awesome. So yeah, I think covers is what I like the most, because it's shorter, you get to have fun and then move on to something else. And you get to really put as much as you want on one image that you can make look really cool.
Right.
And you can move on then to something else. I think I may have a little bit of attention deficit in terms of like how long I can be on something.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I want to see a Ninja Turtle book by you. I loved that cover. That cover was dope as fuck. Yeah, that was awesome. I was like, I saw it come into in the order, and I was like, what the? I was like, that's so weird. Like, I told my manager, I was like, dude, I'm interviewing him. I'm interviewing him this week. Yeah, so I mean, I get it. Like, at least like when you're doing covers, you can kind of like dabble in it without having to like be stuck with something. So you can do this, you can do that, you can do this, and like while still doing your own stuff. Before I let you get out of here, though, I'm curious, like, what books or creators are you currently into? Like, what have you read anything recently that like really stood out to you that you could like recommend?
Okay, wait, I need to check the name of it. Okay, so I have Gleam, which is published by TKO Studio, and it's made by Freddy Carrasco. I actually got it back from my shelf because I read it at least a bunch of times already, but I still go back to it again and again. It's a science fiction type of story, black and white, and I'm not exactly sure how to describe it because the art is amazing and it has a very dreamy kind of vibe. And I think the best way, like I can't even, it's an anthology of different short stories. But the thing is, I'd rather let people just Google it for themselves and discover, like, make up their mind about whether or not they think it looks appealing.
Mm-hmm.
It does for me. Like, I really love it because the storytelling is amazing. And the types of stories are always very funny or extremely sad. in a way that touches you. Like it's one of those books that touches you. It's not just having fun. It leaves a sort of emotional impact afterwards.
Okay, I love. I mean, that's a testament to a great story is when it sticks with
Yeah.
you. Sure.
So yeah, that's my recommendation of the day, kids.
All right, cool. Well, like I said at the beginning, I want to thank you again for taking time to talk with me. It's been a pleasure, man. I'm
Yeah, same.
looking forward to Delia. I'm gonna, and I once it's out, definitely gonna be recommending it to people at the shop. But before you go, can you share with everybody where we can number one, where we can find you online, and where we can find your stuff if we want to get.
The easiest way is my Twitter and my Instagram.
Okay.
So it's literally just my name. So on Instagram is Juni Ba, Juni.ba. And on Twitter, let me check again the name because like I'm not. It's Juni_Ba. Yeah. So those are the main two easy ways to like see what I'm posting and keeping up with the stuff that I'm doing. Maybe I should make a blog page or something, like a website page, so to direct people to.
And then and then you got a bunch of work up on the Kugali site as well, right?
Yeah. So unless I'm mistaken, my work is still on there. I generally tend to put my stuff on Kugali, and then when it starts getting picked up by other places, I move it. So yeah, so presumably there's still a bunch of the stuff that I made on Kugali, but like the big one I think is going to be the Delia coming at TKO.
All right, man. Well, I'm gonna drop for everybody watching, listening. I'm gonna drop all those links down below so you can follow Juni. You can check out his work. And again, dude, thank you for chatting with me. It's been a blast, man. And I'd love to do this with you again sometime in the future too, if you're up for
Oh
it.
yeah, for sure.
All right, cool, man.